This is Australia in terms of area, the sixth largest country in the world, which is currently experiencing a major crisis, while Australia is usually counted among the wealthiest countries in the world, in terms of salaries and standard of living surpassing many developed countries. It is slowly getting trapped in a problem that could become a significant headache in the future. Welcome back to Epic Explorer, guys. Let's talk about the bright side of Australia first. Australia is famous worldwide for its wildlife and beautiful coastline. There are many species of kangaroos, pythons and snakes found only in Australia. Anyway, I know Australia mainly because of its cricket team. For me, Australia was just those cricket players like Steve Waugh, Ricky Ponting, Glenn McGrath and Andrew Symonds. I didn't even know where Australia was or who these people were. But Australia is famous for one more thing in the world, and that is its peculiar geography. Australia is disconnected from the rest of the world, south of the Indian Ocean. It is the only country that is both a country and a continent. If we look at the map of Australia, one thing is very obvious. About 90% of Australia's area is desert, and that's why around 85% of Australia's population lives along the coastline. So, roughly 85% to 90% of Australia is completely empty. 75% of Australia's population lives in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. These three cities are located on Australia's coastline. To understand Australia's population pattern, we need to fall through into history because Australia remained anonymous throughout human history until it was first discovered by a Dutchman named William Janszoon in 1606. He stumbled upon it while returning from Indonesia with trade goods, and due to a sea storm, his ship veered off course and ended up in what is now known as Timor Sea. Where he spotted a distant island, this was Australia. William returned and informed everyone about this island, and then in 1770, British explorer Captain James Cook set out on a voyage with his companions. They halted at Botany Bay on Australia's eastern side, where they encountered fierce resistance from the local people. Captain Cook narrowly escaped with his life and had to retreat. Then, 8 years later, Captain Arthur Phillip arrived with 11 ships and 300 people and claimed control of this coastline. After bringing this part under British control, he attempted to discover Australia's western side. However, many of his companions were killed due to the hot weather and severe thirst, forcing them to retreat. Australia truly gained fame when massive reserves of gold were discovered in a village named Bathurst, 108,500 and 121 kilometers away. Over the next 20 years, 40% of the world's gold production was in Australia. All this gold went to Britain, and the British government used it to maintain the pound's rate. These 20 years are known as the years of gold rush. During this time, millions of people immigrated to Australia from Europe and America. When this gold was discovered, Australia's population was 4.5 million, and 20 years later, it reached 1.7 million. From 187 to 1900, Australia was divided into these 6 colonies. Then in 1901, all these colonies united, and a country named the Commonwealth State of Australia appeared on the world map. After this, Australia's journey of progress began. At that time, apart from white people, no one else was allowed immigration to Australia, and this continued for the next 60 years. Finally, in 1967, the non-white immigration policy was abolished, and immigration criteria were based on skill sets rather than skin color. After that, thousands of people from Asia, the Middle East and the Pacific started settling in Australia. And to this day, people from various cultural backgrounds continue to immigrate and settle in Australia, making it a multicultural country where you will find people of every race and religion. Today, Australia is the friendliest country in the world, and in terms of quality of life, it ranks at the top in the world, which is why it is a dream country for many people. But Australia is becoming a trap. Australia has topped the list of the world's least affordable countries in recent years. 3 Australian cities are now among the top 10 unaffordable cities. After Hong Kong, Sydney is the second most expensive city in the world. Australia's housing market plays a significant role in making it unaffordable. If you watch videos, you might think there is so much empty space in Australia, so buying a house here would be very affordable. But the reality is quite the opposite. However, before I continue, let me tell you a bit about the Australian mentality. While owning a home is a desire for everyone around the world, for Australians, it's a national identity. Home ownership in Australia is seen as a sign of stability and prosperity. Even today, for 70.5% of Australians, owning their own home is their top priority and dream. But this dream is slowly dying. Let me explain why. In 1970, the average annual salary in Sydney was $200. And at that time, the normal price of a house was around $700. By 2024, this average annual salary has reached $74,000. This means that the salary has increased 17 times since 1900. But on the other hand, the average price of a house has reached $1.5 million, which is 80 times higher than in 1970. This housing crisis means that even if you save your entire salary for the next 20 years, it will be very difficult to buy a house because the price of houses will have skyrocketed. This situation is not only in Sydney, but also in all major Australian cities. Even those Australians who earn $100,000 can only afford 13% of homes, and even for these 13%, they have to take out huge mortgages. That's why Australian households have one of the highest debts in the world. Now, with the increasing population, only 3 to 4 cities are left because all jobs and universities are also in these cities. So immigrants and students also come to these cities. Now, Australia has an option to impose restrictions on immigration, but doing so will have a very negative impact on Australia's economy. Almost 17% of Australia's economy runs because of foreign students. These students are the ones who come to Australia to study so that after completing their education, they can get a job and a PR. The fees of universities in Australia are very high, and Australia's economy gets a boost from the fees of students coming from other countries. Secondly, Australia's own population is not enough to fulfill industry requirements, so they need labor from outside. However, labor that can speak good English and has relevant skills. In such a situation, Australia cannot reduce immigration. Yes, Australia has already tightened its policies so that only qualified people. In such a scenario, when millions of people come to Australia every year, it will be very difficult to accommodate them. Australia is truly an example of right planning. A country that was inhabited only 200 years ago is now one of the top economies in the world. Let's see how Australia deals with this housing crisis. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video with another interesting topic.